One Piece Strong World was the first movie directly written by Oda himself. You can tell from every aspect of this movie that the person who created this wacky world was behind the helm, and honestly, it felt good. Released on December 12th, 2009, this was the first movie released in March, and the first time film fans had to wait significantly more than a year to get their movie magic fix. This film aired after the manga chapter where Crocodile saves Ace from being executed at Marineford, whereas the anime was premiering the Little East Blue arc leading up to the release of Strong World. It's clear to me that the One Piece movie franchise had hit a bit of a rough patch, at least creatively, with the last two movies being adaptations of early arcs from the series. A shakeup was definitely needed, and who else could Toei turn to other than the god himself? That was definitely a smart move, but because Oda is behind the wheel, I feel I have to be a bit more critical of the finished product. So, let's dive into Strong World. It's not even a competition. This is by far the best opening of any movie yet. And by opening, I mean the entire first 12 minutes until the title bursts onto the screen. A movie has never quite captured the One Piece magic like this one did. Right away, the thread of the film is established with exposition from Garp and Sengoku, and a display of Shiki's insane power. Then, it cuts to Luffy in some crazy floating collection of islands. What a spectacular visual. He says he needs to find his crew quickly, and then just vaults off the island he's on, and we follow him as he falls. It's all so cool, and then he's gotta fight some strong monsters. Meanwhile, we see Frankie, Robin, and Brooke making his movie debut, leaving some ancient-looking temple. Frankie's hair is down, he's out of juice, and they are attacked by flesh-eating ants. Brooke takes them all down because he's offended they don't want to eat him. Then Robin makes a comment that all the creatures on the island evolved so that strength is the only thing that matters, and boom! Cut to the opening credits. What a spectacular way to kick things off. This whole opening sequence had so much personality and energy while introducing you to the rest of the crew. You could tell a lot went into crafting a fun experience, and even the score is far different than anything in the anime and adds to that unique vibe. I really loved how things began in media res. You don't need to know why the Straw Hats are at this location or why they're split up. In fact, not knowing is what makes this sequence so exciting. As fans, we understand they're up to the same old insane stuff, but even for a newcomer, this is a fast-paced and exciting way to introduce them to the characters and get them into the story. I'm really gushing about this opening, and I'm going to stop, but I was very impressed, and it made me excited to see how things would shake out. We find that Nami has been kidnapped by Shiki, then we flash back to a week prior, and the movie unfolds to bring us up to speed. While sailing somewhere non-distinct, the Straw Hats get word that entire towns are being destroyed in East Blue, and you can tell Oda wrote this movie because he couldn't help himself from inserting a tease about Sanji's backstory. Too late! I'm from the future, and I already know how things go down. Nice try, old man, but you can't play with my heart anymore. So, Luffy decides it's time to cut this journey short and head back to the East Blue to save everyone's lives. He says that so nonchalantly, it did take me back a bit. The rest of the Straw Hats agree, but I have no idea how they could get back. They'd have to cross the Comm Belt, I guess, but they don't have the means to do so. Don't think about it, because an answer comes from the skies. Shiki and his flying island ship soar above them as a cyclone is heading their way. Luffy signals them, and Nami issues a warning so that they're safe. This causes Shiki to come down, tell the Straw Hats he'll take them to the East Blue with his float powers, only to bring them all crashing down on his floating islands and steal Nami to be his navigator. How Arlong of him. And that's that. That's how we find our crew in this predicament. Now, I know what you're thinking. Denny, baby, honey, that's all well and good. But what we're really here for are your completely meaningless opinions on the nebulous beast that is One Piece canon. Alright, I'll give you sick little monsters the juice you crave. Strong World is my toughest opponent yet. With past movies, we've had clear out-of-continuity nonsense, we've had if you squint it could have happened, we've had condensed retellings and bizarre alternate reality retellings of arcs, but we've never had Oda reach in and play with the fabric of his reality before. I've done all the research my little heart can handle, Reddit, and fandom pages, and these are my thoughts on the matter. Since Oda wrote this movie, and since he published Chapter 0 to promote it, I want to say that everything in this movie is canon, but I can't. My rule with things outside the manga is that if they were written by Oda, they are canon, unless they directly contradict the manga story. I think that Chapter 0 and the events of the past as described within this movie are all canon, since there is nothing about them that is contradicted throughout the manga, as far as I know. But I do know that the manga contradicts this movie. I mean, in general, this just seems like way too big of a deal to not have anyone ever mention it again, but that's a lame reason. Factually, we know Brook describes his fight against Duval as his first one as a member of the Straw Hats, and it's not like he has some coming to terms moments in this movie. He's just part of the crew. It also couldn't take place between Duval and Saobody because Cammy and Papag aren't on the ship. So it's a weird mix of a new addition to the canon, as well as some out-of-continuity nonsense. And there you have it, folks. You're welcome. Back to the plot itself. Shiki's plan is to decimate the East Blue in order to make the world government surrender to him. Not quite sure what part 2 of that plan is, but not to worry, because it's not like it was ever going to happen. His creep mime buddy uses the natural plants of Merville in order to make the animals even stronger so they can unleash them as weapons. Shiki wants to use Nami because she's such a good navigator, and the only thing that can ruin his plans is running into unpredictable cyclones. The rest of the Straw Hats slowly find each other, Nami escapes, and Shiki comes looking for her. Here, we get the first real fight of the movie, featuring Shiki versus the first 5 boys. I loved the sunset atmosphere of this fight. It looked gorgeous and gave me movie 6 vibes. But they all get beaten pretty easily, and Nami joins Shiki in order to save them, as well as the East Blue. Now that I've mentioned it, I want to focus in on the animation a bit more here. I think this movie looks gorgeous. The character models are perfect, and I think the star of the show is how well the lighting and shadowing is handled. I do think the vibrance of the characters' designs seemed a bit toned down or just off. For example, Nami, Zoro, and Sanji's hair all seemed paler to me. Also, the skin tones for some characters are strange. Like Usopp has a slightly red hue to him that kind of threw me off. And it's worth mentioning that for some reason, this movie decided to make Robin's eyes brown. I get that's how it is in the manga, so it's not a major deal, but it just looks so much worse. I also think there was one element that Oda very clearly wanted in this movie that would have been difficult to include in the manga, and that's fart shoes. Dr. Indigo's shoes make a fart sound with every step. So yeah, deal with it. Also, everyone's outfits are glorious in this movie. There are a number of costume changes, but I think every single one of them is rock solid. I believe this is the first time Chopper's hat would be covered by another hat, which would become his default style post time skip, so that was clearly on Oda's mind by this point. But I mean, the best fit is clearly Luffy with that jacket over his suit when they invade Shiki's palace. It's just so good. Also, I have nowhere else to put this, so Crawley Davidson. I'm not gonna get too much into the final act of this movie. Overall, I thought the action was fun, but it did kind of turn into a blur of a climax. This is when the movie felt the most like a typical One Piece movie, and that may be due to the medium. I just didn't find the fight with Shiki particularly interesting. I'm glad everyone got some fun action beats, and that Nami got her moment to gloat in Shiki's face before Luffy absolutely destroyed him with his giant Thor axe. That was all very badass. I just think the overarching plot of the movie was a bit too over the top. Essentially, the Straw Hats have to save the world, and it all felt just too super heroic to me. Shiki's plan also didn't really make much sense. In the end, it just felt like a paper-thin excuse to dredge up some conflict. It was enjoyable, but the evil scheme just felt off to me, and the fight was fairly standard until the final blow. Strong World is definitely one of the best One Piece movies up to this point. In fact, why don't I just go ahead and say it's the best one from about every angle. I don't think it's a perfect movie, and there are aspects of other movies that I enjoy more than what was featured within Strong World, but when you're looking at the full picture, I don't think there's any contesting that movie 10 is the most well-rounded. This is the last movie of the 2000s, and I think it was a great way to send out the decade. So, one last time. On the scale of confusing canon, late 2000s anime movies, One Piece Strong World is a 9 out of 10. Oda's first real outing into the film world was a big success, and I'm curious what he's gonna do in the future. However, he's not involved in the next movie, One Piece 3D Straw Hat Chase. Dear God. I want to thank all my lovely patrons who make these videos possible, and I want to thank you, the loons watching all the way to the end. Please let me know your thoughts on Strong World. Given Oda's involvement, I imagine there's a lot of love for this movie, but maybe I'm wrong. Thanks again for watching, and until the next time, I'll shut up.